Nice try. Okay. So, let's just do a quick rough outline, actually just of all 3 chapters. So in this chapter 11, we've got Jabin, or whatever his name is, king of Hazor. He convenes the kings of the northern Canaanite region to form an alliance against Israel. Does that sound familiar at all? So then God promises victory to Israel. Israel obeys God's command. They burn the chariots, they hamstring the horses, and they defeat Hazor, burning it to the ground, and they also conquer the other cities, but those cities are not burned. And then we learn that the whole conquest takes years to complete. In chapter 12, it details the kings that are defeated by the Israelites. It highlights their conquests beyond the Jordan River. It begins with Sihon and Og, and these 2 kings are defeated during the time of Moses, and the land of theirs is given to tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. And then it lists the kings defeated by Joshua and the Israelites in the western region, starting with Jericho, and it concludes a total of 31 kings defeated. And then in chapter 13, Joshua is now an old man. I thought it was kind of funny where it literally says in chapter 13, verse 1, now Joshua was old and advanced in years, and so the Lord said to him, you are old and advanced in years. And one of the commentaries I was reading said, if God says you're old, you're old. I thought that was funny. Okay, and God instructs Joshua to divide this remaining conquered land of Canaan on the west side of the Jordan among the tribes of Israel. There are areas that still need to be conquered. It's inhabited by Philistines and Geshurites. Neither of them ended up being dispossessed. Philistines, anybody know that name? They became a real thorn in the side for Israel. It details the territory given to Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. And then the tribe of Levi, it mentions that they're not given a land inheritance because the God of Israel is their inheritance as promised. So I think that this kind of outlines the 3 chapters for tonight. Any thoughts or questions on any of these chapters?
So when it said the whole conquest takes years to complete, I never got that idea reading this.
Yeah.
It's hard to get that out of, next thing's next, but,
Where do we get that from then?
Did you read that in your commentaries?
yes, so the next chapters that we'll read are gonna be about Caleb, and it's gonna tell us Caleb's age, and so we can kind of, based off of clues that we have in various areas, we can conclude that the whole conquest took about 7 years.
Oh my goodness.
How many years did you say?
7. Any others?
Where's the camera?
But it's
Yeah, I got it over there, so that it can see both of the, hopefully see both of the
Okay.
maps. That's the hope.
Lois was. Not me.
I don't see why you guys are all concerned about it. It's always on me, okay?
I thought it was interesting that it says the Lord himself hardened their hearts.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, that he could destroy them totally. That's what mine says. Exterminating them without mercy. 11 verse, mine says that in 11 verse 20.
Yeah, I think that that's really important to note.
it's a hard thing, but it reminds me a lot of Exodus with Pharaoh. But I think it's really important because we're reminded that this is God's war, not man's war. Yeah. And it's against hearts, you know. These Canaanite hearts were against him. They had so many opportunities to change their hearts, you know, about the God of Israel. Think about hearing about what happened in Egypt. And, you know, their hearts melted in fear, it says that, but then what's their response? It's to form a rebellion against Israel. And then you see something different in people like Rahab, who has a different response to the same news, the same, you know, things that happen. Even the Gibeonites are different, you know, in the way that they responded. So yeah, it is interesting. Anything else? Any other thoughts or questions?
Crazy the comparison, 11 verse 4. They came out with all their troops, like the number that is the sand on the seashore. Like, it just tells you the multitude. I mean, it paints a whole country of people and kings and men gathering together to fight the Israelites. Like,
Yes.
That's crazy.
It paints a real picture, doesn't it? Yeah. Yes.
How many?
So then it would take a long time.
Yeah. 7 years doesn't seem so crazy when you think about.
Yeah, when you really think
When
about
you're reading it, I'm like, oh, little town over here, oh, little town over here. And it was that, but also, like,
there
there's a lot
was
of people.
there was big kingdoms. One of the I wonder if I have it in here somewhere. Hazor, I think. Yeah, here it is in my notes. Hazor was by far the largest city in northern Canaan, 200 acres in size.
Wow.
That says something right there. Yeah. Something that I was a little confused on and I had to find an answer for was where it keeps talking about the half tribe of Manasseh. And in chapter 12, I think it talks about the half tribe of Manasseh on the east side of the river. And then in chapter 13, it talks about the half tribe of Manasseh on the west side of the river. And I was like, so where are they?
What's the other half?
Exactly.
And
But
why was it split?
here's why I was confused, because remember, Joseph's tribe was split into his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, or whatever that is. I thought that half tribe just meant half of the tribe of Joseph. So Manasseh is a whole half tribe. But really, it's talking about half of half, I guess, if you want to call it. Half of Manasseh went on this side, half of Manasseh went on the other side. I didn't realize that. And so I was just tracking wherever I saw the word Manasseh. I didn't think about Manasseh being split. I thought Manasseh was just, which it is, a half of you know, the whole per se, if you want to call it that. But yeah, that really confused me for a bit.
I was
Why
joking
it
when I
split?
said
I
that.
think you told us, but I forgot, why was it split?
Why was Manasseh split?
Yeah.
Some of them wanted the land on the east side of the river, and the other half wanted to go into the land, on the west side of the river. Yep, simple as that. But it
So
confused me.
neither was doing anything they shouldn't do.
I don't know that yet. I've been reading about it. I think, I have to do a little more research, but I think that the half of the tribe that's on the east side ran into issues later on. I don't know, because Moses allowed it. So that's where it kind of is like, was it something that he allowed that he wasn't supposed to allow? Did he, did it have God's blessing? It still was land that they dispossessed, they conquered the land of Sihon and Og, those two kings, whatever lands that is. They did conquer it, so I don't know, but they're separated from the rest of their tribal brother peoples. So I don't know if that was what made an issue for him later on, I don't know.
Well, Gad and Reuben are on that side too, right?
Yeah, you're
On the
right,
other side.
yeah, you're right.
So, yeah, why are there 3 on that side? I don't remember, I feel like I remember reading that, but, and did anyone else get to choose? That, like, that they wanted that? I
No,
don't
it
think
was,
that a
it was
choice.
just by lot, I believe.
Yeah, so how, that's weird that they got split because they
It
got to
is,
choose,
mhm.
kind of.
Mhm. So they, we can actually look at that real quick.
So what was Manasseh's lot? Was it on the west side? And then they were like, well, we want both, or we want the other side? Or was there a
Say that
lot?
again?
Which Manasseh was, cause it was by lot, right? Like by random?
Not for the half that's on the east side. I don't know if they did lot for, because there was Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh that settled on the east side. I don't know if they did lot for that or not,
Okay.
because I didn't read anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can hook this up and we can look at, maps. This is what I need to do. Okay. No peeking. All right, so let's see. Okay. This purple here is the half of Manasseh that settled on the east side. And this yellow is the other half of Manasseh that settled on the west side. It is a lot. And then here, the green is Gad, and the orange is Reuben. And if I remember correctly, collectively Reuben, Gad, and the half of the tribe said, we have large numbers, we need lots more space, this land is great for livestock, and they had a lot of livestock, and so they were like, this is a primo spot for us, let us settle here. And if I remember correctly, Moses said, Moses thought that they were trying to get out of having to enter and conquer the rest of the land with their tribal brothers. And they were like, no, that's not what we're trying to do here. We just really want this land. All of our men will go with you and do the whole conquest with you. And then once it's all done, then the men will return back to the land that is portioned for us. And so they left their families there to settle. And then their men went with them onto the west side of the Jordan. So I'm not sure why I'm not really sure why the tribe split though, why Manasseh split. I didn't really understand the concept of the tribe splitting like that until literally when I was researching this. So I haven't found any more info on that yet, but let's see, what else do we have? This is Judah, this red. We have Simeon in this stripey bit.
Got plopped right in the middle.
I know.
Gotta import everything.
Clearly a man organized this and not a woman, so.
Cause it was based on tribal size, right? Is that what it was, the size of you got, was it based on
I don't know yet.
tribal size?
I don't know yet. I think so, but I'm not sure yet. I haven't done a whole lot of research yet on this one. This is Benjamin, teeny tiny little guy. Dan in the mint color. Ephraim in the blue. Let's see, that was the half tribe of Manasseh. Pink is Issachar. This other purpley bit is Zebulun, I think. Yeah. And then up here is Asher, and then Naphtali. I don't know why they couldn't pick different colors. It's really hard to read the color guide here. Yeah, so that's everybody. Let's see, here's our Northern campaign. Okay, so this is basically what happens in chapter 11, where Joshua and his men go up from Gilgal again, all the way up to the waters of Merom, or whatever that's called, Merom Springs, right here. And then here's the Canaanites that join forces are coming all the way from here, from here, from here, from here. They're coming from all over, but this is where they convene at this spot, and that's where the battle begins. And so then they're chasing them all the way. He pursues the Canaanites and the Hivites from Merom towards Sidon and Mizpah, is what it says. So there's Mizpah. Sidon's like way up here, which that's crazy to me. That's such a long ways. And when you realize, like, when you look at this map and you see the distances that are traveled just in chasing the enemy, not just on the battleground, but chasing the enemy, you realize 7 years is actually pretty believable.
That doesn't look like flat terrain.
No. I mean, that blows my mind. Let's see. I don't know what the rest of that is. I have some other maps here. Let's see. Here's two more about the Northern campaign. So we've got this green here is Joshua's route up from Gilgal to Merom Springs. These pink lines are all the different armies that kind of came together, and so you can see
Against Israel?
against Israel. Yep, that's right. And let's see, there's Sidon over here. It was kind of, I had to like collect multiple maps because it was hard to find maps that had all the names that I wanted to see on them. So here's another one that shows that same thing. Here's from Joshua going up from Gilgal to Merom, and these red arrows here are all the armies that convened together against Israel. And then you can see these arrows going out, and that's Joshua chasing the enemy to Sidon, to Misrephoth-Maim. Mizpah over
Do you
here.
have any idea of how much distance we are talking about?
Well, this is our little gauge here of 20 miles. So there's that. Yep. And who was it that said that's not flat? Was that you, Tracy? Yeah, that's not flat paved or paved sidewalk. That is rough terrain. Let's see. Okay, this one was the best I could come up with for all the kings that are listed in 12. So you've got Jericho here, then Ai, then Jerusalem, and Hebron is here. Jarmuth is here. Lachish is here. Eglon here. Gezer, Debir, and Geter. Where did Geter go? Geter, here you are. Horma. Do I sound like a toddler babbling right now? Like, Horma is over here. Arad is over here. I mean, this is just massive, massive distances. And that's just the southern campaign. Remember, they came up from
from this outside here, and then cross the Jordan. Jericho was their first conquest inside on the west side, and then they just boom right across and then went down, and then they did the northern one. Let's see, Libnah, Adullam, Makeda, where are you at? There you are, here. Bethel is up here. Tapua is up here. So now we're getting into the northern kings. Heifer, Aphek, where are you? Here. And Lasharon is up here. Madon and Hazor, we know those names. Here's Hazor here. There's Madon. Shimron Maron is here. Akshaph is here. Tanak, Megiddo. Kadesh is, boy, they all start blurring together. Here we go. Here's Kadesh. Jokneam.
Left,
Thank you. There we go. Dor
down.
here, king of Joyam and Gilgal. I don't know if here's Joyam, okay, and then Tirzah, right here. And there's everybody. And then over here we see Heshbon, Bezer. I think that's Sidon and Og. That's their territories. That Reuben and Gad and half tribe of Manasseh moved into, I guess, if you want to call it that.
So where did the women and all the children, where did they where were they until everything was conquered? Because they couldn't obviously.
Right. They
it
didn't move
hasn't
around with
conquered,
the
so,
army.
during the 7 years,
Right.
were they more southern or by the Dead Sea or where were they?
Best I can tell is they're at Gilgal because
Okay.
it keeps saying that Joshua set out from Gilgal.
Okay.
And so that makes me think that that's kind of where they set up base camp until they divided up everything for everybody.
Which would make sense because that was their first, after Jericho, that was their first.
Right, it was right there in that area, and they burned Jericho to the ground and Ai. And so Gilgal was probably one of the first that they didn't burn to the ground.
They
Yep.
could live there,
Right.
settle there for a
Yeah.
little bit.
And, let's see, my thought is, so there's two of them, there's one here and there's one here. My guess is this one because it's near a big body of water. That's my guess. But I honestly couldn't tell you one way or the other on it, so.
Has the Dead Sea always been, sidetracking, always been dead and salt? That's the Dead Sea, right? Salt, very salty.
That, I don't think that's the Dead Sea. Is it? Oh, it is. Huh, why did I think it was somewhere else? Well, I don't know, that's a good question.
Michelle,
Oh, yeah.
is Israel still today divided in those tribal areas of land? I mean, do they call this, well, this is the East Manasseh?
That's a good question.
Do they
I don't know.
Say this is.
I don't think so. I don't think so because they were out of their land for so long, and when they
Oh, yeah,
finally
they
moved
were.
back in,
That's
I
right.
don't think that it was divvied up like that. Yeah,
They didn't get to stay there.
right, yes.
Till 1948, they were all invited to come back.
Right.
I think.
But I think that it's a very, very different Israel than the way that it was began, yeah.
I just didn't know if they would still have any significance of those tribes. There,
I'm not sure how, that's a really good question. I'd be interested to know just how much emphasis they put on which tribe you're from. I mean, who can
Yeah,
tell
I'd like to know
anymore?
that Too, yeah.
Who can tell anymore?
I believe the last I heard, oh, okay. Just. Okay.
Do they know which son they are descended from?
Well, that's just it. And here's the thing is if they're going to, the whole point that they're trying to do is they're trying to, have a temple again. And in order for a temple to be actually of any use, you've gotta have a priest in it. And a priest can only be of what tribe?
Levi.
Exactly.
That's right.
So they've gotta come up with a way to figure out who is actually from the tribe of Levi.
Well, Ancestry.com.
Exactly, I was gonna say, genetics.
Down there and get going.
What I last heard was that they actually have a guy in the wing to be priest once that moment arises. Like they always have somebody ready to go. And then they're always constantly training other people to do all the other priestly work so that they can just get a move on once that actually.
When will that temple be finished?
When will the temple be finished? At some point by the tribulation? I'm not sure. Ask Derek that, okay? Yeah.
Okay, Derek, all right.
Also, Jerusalem isn't anything different or greater or anything. I feel like several chapters ago, I thought that, and then when we're looking at everything there, Jerusalem's just another city. Is that because Jerusalem is New Testament focused? I mean, where the things we
Sure.
know about Jerusalem?
I'll have to look into, I know that the temple moved around a bit. I believe it actually settles in Shiloh, there in Ephraim's territory, for a good while. I will need to look further into what happens after that point when it finally moves into Jerusalem, or if that's maybe where the temple was created, where it was built. And so that's why Jerusalem all of a sudden is this place. But for a long time, the tabernacle was in Shiloh, Ark of the Covenant was in Shiloh. So yeah, I will have to look more into when that transition took place, yeah. So, any other map questions?
It's really helpful to see the maps.
Yeah, I like it.
Good. That is the point. Yeah, I found them very helpful. This website that I found, what's it called again? Let me see if I can find it. Okay, you're gonna laugh at this. It's called casualenglishbible.com. It literally takes the chapter of the Bible, translates it into very casual English, but the thing that I found the most helpful is all the maps that it pairs with it. So I can go to Joshua chapter 11 on this website, and it has a map attached to that article, I guess, whatever you want to call it, that pertains exactly to the events that happened in that chapter. So it's been really helpful, finding all the weird places everywhere. Let's see. Translation changes. I know we kind of jumped right over that. Did anybody notice anything? Denise, you're usually pretty good at
Yeah, there was
noticing
a
them.
bunch.
You go, my girl.
The whole hamstring thing, mine did not
Oh,
say
yeah, mine
that.
is the same.
What did mine say? Where was that?
That's in verse 9 at least.
Another
At least
word.
said something different.
Crippled, mine says
Crippled,
crippled.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we always have something.
Yeah.
Hops.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
I had a vision of what hamstrung looked
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and so I just looked it up, the
Oh, no.
definition.
What was it?
Something about the
Tearing their
It's the Achilles
hamstrings.
tendon
Yeah.
of the horse, isn't it?
Then they can't walk anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It-
that's what I thought probably.
I kinda pictured,
Oh.
that's what I had envisioned as hamstrung, and so I
So you're relieved.
wanted to know, it,
It wasn't as ugly as you thought.
yeah.
Wait till you see what comes up on your phone now.
We talked about this,
It's gonna start sending you, like advertisements for vets and everything.
I can only hope that's what it's.
That would be the best of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Ooh.
Yeah, there was a
Talked
bunch,
about
I
this.
can't remember.
Let's see, verse 14, Lois, can you read, I think that's one that you read and I thought it sounded different.
11:14.
Just to 14, yeah, chapter 11, verse 14.
Okay, let's see if I can find it. The Israelites carried off for themselves all the plunder and livestock of these cities, but all the people they put to the sword until they completely destroyed them, not sparing anyone that breathed.
Oh, okay, no, I must
There
have
was
heard
something,
wrong.
I know what you're talking about, it has to do with kill, they said the word killed and I was like,
Yeah.
there's something, and I was like, that
It
doesn't
was like,
sound
I
fine at
thought you
all.
said, I heard you wrong, I thought you said until it dropped them, or something like that, and I was like, well, that's a unique way of saying kill.
Yeah, it was something weird, I thought so too though.
Okay, so I must, I don't know.
It was weird too, but I couldn't.
Maybe I just made something up.
Well, that's a different translation.
Lois ad-libbing over here.
Because my site is kind of jumping around. so-
Oh, got it, okay.
Yeah, the MS
I
is
thought that it had a very
affecting my
unique and
eyesight.
gentle way of saying that.
I have double vision sometimes.
That's okay, that's all right. Any others that you guys noticed? Okay. All right, and then we looked at maps. I chose to do map stuff instead of people's and their roles, because I thought that was much more beneficial. Cross references. I thought this was interesting, how we talked about how the beginning of the chapter is very familiar, and that's because chapters 5, 9, 10, and 11 all start in that very similar way of, there's a king of Canaan that's concerned by the news of Israel, and so he does something, usually there's alliances or some sort of rallying of troops and going out to meet Israel in battle, and then you have the eventual defeat of these kings. So it's really interesting that just happens time and time again, but I think that adds to that verse that you were pointing out, Tracy, about how God hardened the hearts of the people. And so I think that's why you keep seeing this pattern of they're afraid because of the news of Israel's consecutive victories, and so they respond by forming a rebellion force. And that's that hardening of the heart that we keep seeing in play over and over and over again. So when you see something different, like the Gibeonites, that's totally out of the pattern, then that really says something, that they didn't have that same hardened heart that the other nations had, the other kings had. Some of the other cross references, Numbers 18 talks about why there's no land inheritance for the Levites. Does anybody remember?
Because everyone was supposed to take care of them, right?
That's right.
Because they were the priests and
Yep.
doing God's work, so everyone had to take care of them.
Yep, so they had a very special relationship with God. God was their portion, but even more so, God provided their portion through all of the tithes that the people would bring. And so they would have, they would have a portion of whatever was brought for a sacrifice, except for, some that they didn't have any. But that was how they were provided for. And so they didn't need land to work the land and to have cattle and to have, whatever. They obviously had a place for them to live, but they didn't have land to work like the other tribes did. And so
that makes them different. They didn't have land inheritance for the purpose of working the land. Numbers 21, that's the whole chapter that talks about the defeat of Sihon and Og. And remember, that's in the time of when Moses is in leadership. And then Psalm 78:55 says, he drove out nations before them and allotted their lands to them as an inheritance. He settled the tribes of Israel in their homes. This whole chapter, this whole psalm it's a really wonderful psalm. I really like it. It's a really good overview of God's dealings with Israel from Egypt to Promised Land. And it really highlights man's stubborn rebellion, but it also highlights God's faithful goodness to his people. So it's a really good psalm.
Which psalm?
Psalm 78.
It's really long.
It goes by really easy though. All right, any other thoughts or questions before we do the summary then? Okay, so starting in chapter 11, we've got the first 5 verses. They talk about this King Jabin, king of Hazor. He's heard about Israel's victory in the south, and so he gathers a great alliance of northern armies to fight against Israel. And so together with soldiers and horses and chariots and all these armies come together, they are joined together at Merom Springs, or the waters of Merom, or whatever your version calls it. And then 6 through 15, we've got God commanding Joshua to not be afraid, which we keep seeing over and over again. But I mean, he's really got good reason to be afraid here. What was that you said, Molly, where the armies are as numerous as the sands or something like that? Yeah, that's just it. You really see what Joshua is up against. It takes a lot of faith to go against an army of that size. But God also commands Joshua to hamstring the horses and to burn the chariots. So I thought that was really interesting, the mention of that, because it's very specific. You don't ever see that mentioned with any of the other armies that Joshua's gone up against. So this must be something new. What do you guys think? What does that tell us about the enemy that Joshua is facing?
Well, they were pretty mobile.
Yeah,
That's why they had the chariots
right.
and the horses.
So they have,
So they had to attack them a little differently.
they did. And it also meant that this army had a severe advantage over Israel. So not only were there large numbers that Israel was going up against, but they were going up against a more advanced army than they had previously gone up against. And so God telling this to Joshua beforehand, it gave Joshua an even better idea of what he was facing, and even more reason to trust God with this victory. And so the purpose of hamstringing the horses, like we talked about, it's basically cutting the Achilles tendon, and so it basically just makes the horses unfit for any of their military uses. But what I think is interesting is that these horses and chariots are made completely useless, and they're not kept as part of the plunder that took place in verse 14 or something like that. So not only did they deprive the Canaanite forces of their military advantage, it also prevented Israel from having any kind of military advantage. And it brought to mind another psalm, Psalm 20 verse 7, and it basically says that Israel should not put their trust in horses or in chariots, but in God alone. And that's what it made me think of. It's God alone who gives the victory.
And to show the other tribes, it's from God.
Yes.
Like the Israelites weren't, they were a powerful army because of God, not because of them.
Right.
if they would have had any type of military advantage, people would just say, oh yeah, it's because of the horses or X, Y, Z.
Right, right, exactly, exactly.
And the hamstringing would kind of be, when you were describing that, it kind of made me picture like shooting out somebody's tires. now.
Mm-hmm,
Well, they can't go anywhere.
mm-hmm,
They're
exactly,
stuck.
exactly, exactly. I think that was the point, yeah, because when you have, like you were saying, mobility, boy, you can get archers to that side of the field pretty quickly, or you can, get over to that side and rout your enemy or whatever that, I don't know, I'm not a military person, but I think it's pretty easy to see how that could be very, useful in battle, yeah.
So why not just kill the horses?
Well, I'm wondering if that's
Are they
just,
usable if their Achilles tendon is damaged?
I think possibly, but also, I mean, I don't know, it's hard for me to speak for God here, because this is God's command. I'm wondering if that's part of it, if they have usefulness outside of military use, outside of like, they're gonna be ran hard in battle, so maybe it's less than that, a walk instead of a run. But maybe that's just God caring for his creation as well. I don't know, yeah. Okay, and then 16 to 23, this section summarizes the continued war that Israel waged against the northern Canaanite region. Verse 18 tells us that Joshua battled the Canaanite kings for a long time, and like I said, it's estimated that it's around 7 years. I'll see if I can dive into that math a little bit better. I'll look into that with this with this next section of chapter 14 and 15, because that's where it talks about Caleb. And we also see that Joshua adheres to Moses' commands in destroying all inhabitants, including the Anakim. Does anybody know what the Anakim are? They're giants. They're one of 3 races of giants. And obviously, like I said, that there was some left in the Philistine area, Philistia. I think it was Philistia, Phoenicia, and Lebanon. That was the area that there was some remaining. Yeah, like I said, Philistia, or the Philistines, became Israel's chief enemy during the time of Samuel. Anybody know the name of a Philistine? Goliath, yeah. He was a remnant of this Anakim that was meant to be destroyed. So obviously we can see an example of, something that come back to bite them in the butt because they didn't obey God's command. Verse 20, we talked about this, that it's a very important verse, really for the entire conquest. For it was of the Lord to harden their hearts, that they might receive no mercy. And I have this bit here I'm going to read that I took from one of my commentaries. I thought it spoke really well. It says, the Bible has a lot to say about God hardening the hearts of sinners. The first occurrence of this expression is in the book of Exodus, where we read that God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and that's what we were kind of talking about. But it's important to recognize that God only hardened Pharaoh's heart after Pharaoh first hardened it himself. God does not harden the hearts of people who are seeking him, but of those who are defiantly rejecting him. The Canaanites were not struggling to do right, but were determined to do wrong. And when people reach that point of willful rebellion, God will further harden their hearts to accomplish his purposes. And then I think of like Rahab and people like that, where you see the exception to the majority. Majority of Canaan was hardening their hearts against God, but you see these small few who were not hardening their hearts and who were willing to submit and to yield to God's power and authority
in the land. And so, yeah, do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think it's proof that God has given them a chance, because they took that chance, those people, like Rahab.
Yeah.
That it really explains it more, the hardening the heart thing, because it's like God controls your emotions.
Right.
Like I don't, yeah,
Mhm.
but that makes more sense what you wrote and said
Yes.
out loud.
Because it doesn't take free will out as an
Correct,
option
that was
at
my,
all.
I was like, I don't get it then, but
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
Free will is still there. God uses our free will choices.
For his plan.
For
yeah.
his plan, exactly, yeah, yep. We can finish up here, chapter 12. Like we said, it offers a list of all the kings defeated by Israel in the promised land. And future generations would then read this list of names and know that these stories were not just fairy tales. This is real history that happened for Israel. And more than that, when I was reading it, my mind thought of these names, and they're piled high, and it acts almost like the memorial stones that God commands Israel to erect, usually after some sort of miraculous event where we see God's power. And it's these stones that are piled high act as a memorial of what God did. And it's to remind all people, not just Israel, but anybody who saw that, anybody would see that and know and be reminded of God's power, God's working, God's whatever it was supposed to remind you of there. Like the stones that were erected at the Jordan River when God stopped the Jordan River waters so that the people could cross. And so my thought was kind of like these names are piled high like these memorial stones, and they act as a memorial, and just reminding people that the Creator is greater than his creation, and that how impossible things happen when we trust and obey God. It has these reminders for us, even just in the list of names. Chapter 13, we see that there's still a lot of land to conquer, but Joshua is an old man at this point. The Israelite army has done their part, and so now the remainder of the conquest is actually going to be handled by the tribes on a town-by-town basis, and we'll see that in the next chapter with Caleb. He does this very thing. So it was time now for Joshua to divide up the land. And if you think about it, Israel had been nomadic for at least 40 years, probably close to 50 years by now. And before that, they spent 400 years as slaves in another country. This is the first time in forever, actually, and ever, that they get to be landowners, that they get to be in their own country. And so allotting the inheritance, this land inheritance, was intended to actually motivate the Israelites to finish driving out the Canaanites. And it's kind of that same concept of like rent versus own. If you own something, you're really invested in it, you're committed to it, you're really putting your all into it. And so that was kind of the idea behind, because I thought to myself, why divide up the land when it's not fully conquered? But I think that was something that I read in a couple of commentaries, and I thought, oh, that makes sense, actually. You've got this idea of, we get to actually settle and put roots down into this land, and so it's going to further motivate them to drive out the enemy, to drive out the rest of the Canaanites. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but the idea was good. And so then verse 8 to 33, the rest of the whole chapter, it tells us of the land inheritance for half the tribe of Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben. They already received their portions on the east side of the Jordan River. The inheritance had been assigned to each tribe just as Moses had promised. And then the only tribe that did not receive an inheritance of the land was that of Levi, because the Levites had been chosen by God to perform the work of maintaining the tabernacle and later the temple. And so when the Israelites brought offerings to the Lord, a portion would be given to the Levites to provide for them. And so instead of a parcel of land, the Lord himself was their inheritance. So that summarizes our 3 chapters there. Any other thoughts or questions on this section here?
I forgot to ask about 11:13, where he talks about the mounds.
Oh, yes. I looked into that. I couldn't find anything on that, but I looked into that because I thought it was interesting. Because what are the 3 places that are burned to the ground? It's Jericho, Ai, and now Hazor. And I was trying to figure out just why those 3 and why not others. And it talks about, the others that are on the mounds. Are those the only 3 that were not on mounds? What was it about mounds that made them fit for not burning to the ground? I really couldn't find a lot of information on it. So the question still stands. But one of the commentaries said that Hazor was probably burned to the ground because it was the largest city in the northern area. And so it was basically as an example. If Hazor can burn to the ground, then what can't Joshua burn to the ground? That kind of thing. So that might explain Hazor, but I don't know about Jericho and Ai, because I don't really know how big they are.
My Bible says in ancient times, many of the cities were built on ruins of previous settlements.
Yes.
Over the course of many years, a mound of a small hill of accumulated debris and would form a foundation of future construction.
Yep, that's very true.
They were built on the city dumps.
Yeah. But I did read that archaeologists can have found Hazor, and they can tell that it was burned to the ground in whatever, time this was, yeah. So maybe for reasons like that, where history can actually pinpoint certain things. I don't know, but it's pretty cool. Yeah. So, any other thoughts or questions? Okay. Would you mind closing us in prayer, Mary?
Dear Lord, thank you again for what we're getting out of your word, that it's not just a list of names and places, but it really has a significance of you working on behalf of your people and fulfilling your covenant through them. Just pray as we continue through Joshua, we'll continue to see what you want us to see. Be with each one of us now in our